So welcome to Venn. Thank you for attending the webinar this morning. My name is Brian, founder of Venn. And for those who know Venn, I'm probably repeating myself. For those that don't, I'll give you a quick summary. But principally, Venn is what started as a digital marketing agency where we designed, built and marketed websites across e-commerce, tech and recruitment. And certainly over the last 5 years, pretty much we become completely focused and dedicated to the recruitment and careers market, using the technology that we built, using a lot of the experience we have in the recruitment sector to design, build and market recruitment agency websites. That was our biggest growth area. So we've roughly around 200-ish global websites that have been designed, built and marketed. We're relatively comfortable. We now know how to attract clients, how to attract candidates on behalf of our customers, and some of the systems and processes and features, which we'll talk about today, but how they can help convert talent through websites. We've moved directly into the careers industry. So another part of what we're now focused on as a business is the careers sector direct. So how we can help employers attract, engage and convert talent directly for their own hiring. So taking some of the technology that we built and applying that directly to the careers market. So today's presentation is just summarising to a certain extent how people are using AI, the pros and cons of that we are seeing so far. Not that we're principally pushing AI as a primary objective of this session today, but mainly just highlighting some of the features that we're seeing people adopt and how it is helping people save time, but also working with it can help attract talent. So without much further ado, presentation put together should be no more than 10, 15 slides, and then we can open up to any questions. HR tech as an industry, I think, has exploded over the last, again, I think in my experience, certainly over the last 5, possibly 4 years, the actual HR tech market's massively changed. If we look at the way in which LinkedIn has changed its proposition, if we look at the advent of so many new HR tech products to do with onboarding en masse, a lot of them US based, where you've got large scale employers looking to vet, document, schedule, employ, onboard and hire all through technology. It's pretty much started there, and now they're estimating it's roughly a $40 billion market. And the reason why I highlight it in dollars is simply because the UK economy will simply follow what the US economy is doing. So how some of these tools are now being brought into agencies day to day. And I think part of today's conversation is how can employers adopt some of those agency tools and practices to save time and save money for their organisations as well. AI, in terms of recruiters using it, a lot of the time now it's about automating processes. What can recruiters, talent acquisition managers do to find, attract and vet talent that's coming through? So it's a real hot topic, which we'll come on to in a second, the sort of pros of doing that, but also the dangers of, are we using AI to attract but also reject potential candidates, and how biased or unbiased could that be if done in the wrong way? So we'll come back to that later on. But I think fundamentally for this presentation, it's also about how we can look at the e-commerce sector. Something that I spent a lot of time in when we built Venn roughly 10 years ago was learning how the e-commerce market rapidly changed its behaviours to get into the human psychology of how they could attract consumers, how they could convert consumers, and all the tactics. They've really matured in that space. And a lot of the learnings that we're taking at Venn do originate from the e-commerce market. So a quick analogy, I think most employers are still using an old playbook. They're still going down the old process of come to our website, no agencies please, upload your CV and we may or may not come back to you. And I think fundamentally that's a missed opportunity on multiple levels, which we'll come back to in a second. I think you're beginning to see the fall from grace in terms of the job boards themselves. Indeed, in my opinion, needs to change to become a multimedia platform if it's going to survive. You've seen the likes of monster.com already go into administration, along with multiple. It's just that the commercial model just does not stack up. LinkedIn's taken a larger market share of recruiters' budget, and it's super expensive for recruitment agencies to post jobs on there. Fundamentally, it's a chokehold on the market because they know there's not many alternatives now, but there are, and we'll come back to that today. I think there's multiple platforms that will begin to challenge LinkedIn because for me, it's not a good tool that people want to use day to day. I think also if you look at human behaviours, the way they've changed in e-commerce, how can we learn from the way in which a new generation of talent is beginning to use third-party tools such as TikTok, Facebook, LinkedIn. They're browsing at night through social media content platforms such as YouTube, etc. They're not doing that on job boards. They're not passively browsing cool career content at night because there is none. There's no cool career content on a job board. So how's that market going to evolve? I think we saw the death of Yellow Pages, and for those of you old enough, the death of BT phone book. And that really is a signal to the market that if a job board is just acting as a list, then it's not adding any value, it's not an attractive place to return, and therefore it's got a low commitment and therefore low value proposition. So I think that shift for employers direct, where can they attract talent? How can they attract talent? And you're beginning to see agencies pivot a little bit more in this way as well. Another process in terms of buying behaviour, I think the influence of real people, authentic content, real reviews, that's become the sort of landmark shift in consumer buying, which is nothing but a positive. I think we saw the days of celebrity, and it was very much celebrity endorsement, and having somebody in power or influence try and get you to buy a third-party product. So it could be David Beckham promoting sunglasses. And to a certain extent, you've seen recruitment agencies take a similar position where the recruiter, as a market expert, would influence the decision towards the candidate on how they could connect with or buy or go for an interview. And that's great. I think it absolutely has a place. But to a certain extent, we're not daft. We now want real reviews, real authentic content, and we will go looking and searching for that real proof and what do real employees say about that business. So there are third-party platforms such as Glassdoor, which to a certain extent are used as a negative. So how are employers fighting back and giving the real insight into how many good things they're actually doing within a business? Are they building a careers destination to share through apprenticeships, graduate campaigns, management, promotion, DE&I? How are we sharing those amazing stories that are actually happening day to day in an organisation instead of just letting letting passive talent miss an opportunity of looking at your organisation? So we'll come back to reviews later on. Are these, well, to a certain extent, AI is already having, when we are looking at the negative side of AI, you've seen a few class action lawsuits beginning to come out of the US market. Workday has been the first adopter of AI at scale, but they're also possibly one of the first that are now facing a significant discrimination case where AI is being tuned to not enable interviews to go through because the data set required to schedule an interview is simply not being met. And that will become an issue. I think that will only begin to grow as people misuse, mismanage. There was another class action lawsuit in Amazon where the AI tool was designed to vet whether people were fit enough to do a 10-hour shift on their feet around an Amazon warehouse. So I think AI can be used for good, but it also can be used for bad. So we have to be really careful, especially in the recruitment agency market, where things are done at scale, how these tools are being used. And employers can learn from that. I think the way in which we can save time is a positive, but in the way it could be misused or mismanaged, we need to be careful around that. So how the market's shifting, just to mention a few brands, there are products out there now that do look superb in terms of saving time, and they're scanning third-party platforms. So people who've been cited for writing blogs, white papers, it's finding that name, it's finding that profile, somebody who's not active on the market. There's AI tools now going out there and finding people who are market leaders or voices of influence over a certain sector. And it's those AI tools that are now trying to connect with and speak to and sometimes schedule interviews with those people who are not even actively looking. So that's a huge shift in the market. They're looking at places like GitHub or YouTube or Reddit, where somebody might be blogging or talking about renewable energy or AI themselves, and then all of a sudden you get a chat bot pestering you to death because you've made a comment about AI, and that's the future of outbound and outreach. Instead of a recruiter sat there all day on the phone or a talent acquisition manager prospecting people through clicks on Indeed, I think you will see a lot of this automation happen more and more. The second part of that is down through products like HireView, which again is now scheduling video-based interviews automatically with an AI chatbot where you can talk to, and that will then score and vet the basis of your interview. So again, really impressive tools and can massively speed up to or remove friction from the hiring process. But it also comes with some risk, both around if you're an employer direct, does that fairly represent your employer brand? And does that really get across the value of what you're doing as a business? And I think to a certain extent, that's the pivot of today's presentation. How can employers build value? How can employers really start to leverage real stories, real content to get real commitment coming through to their organisation? For me, I think the easier things are, the less commitment you ultimately get. And that's not just about careers, that's in life. You see that across, again, even the shift in dating apps. There's plenty of talks now about the human psychology behind the value of dating apps and what's negatively done to relationships. If you can simply swipe, you don't have to go up to a person in a bar and strike up a conversation. You're suddenly seeing a change in human behaviour because it's easier to sit behind your phone and talk to somebody anonymously than it is to maybe walk up to them in the street, which again I haven't done myself, but I know people should. So I think we have to think about how can we create commitment? How can employer, how can a recruitment agency attract potential talent through content? And the more we commit as employers, the more the employee may commit. But we fundamentally might not want to treat jobs and hiring like disposable subscriptions. And to a certain extent, that is a risk of where we're headed as an industry. I think with super low commitment and now the gig economy taking place, will that work for the blue collar industry? Absolutely. I think the speed in which they can get jobs straight away, they can get hired and they can find a place of work tomorrow, low skilled, low commitment, but it's also those jobs that will be challenged. So you'll begin to see this race for AI that if it's that easy to onboard and employ somebody through an AI chatbot, at what point will those roles become completely replaced by AI? And that is the concern. So if we're working in an industry where skill and talent is in demand, we need to look at increasing the levels of commitment. We need to look at maybe harder for people to apply because we want to see the cream rise to the top, because typically skilled people are not on the market, they're in the market working. So it's how we go about attracting their eyeballs through different approaches to finding your agency or finding your employer direct. So I think we coined the phrase here at Venn where AI can be great if you use it to become more human. And that's something we kind of want to stand by, the way in which we build AI into our products, the way we can enable even teammates at Venn, how can they get more time back to do the more human tasks, such as thinking, planning strategies, planning campaigns, designing products. Can we use AI and Venn to become more human, where we're not simply doing manual tasks that take time and waste time? And I think that can be said across the talent industry. So in terms of steps that we're beginning to take at Venn, and again, this is sort of reviewing what's currently in the market. And I think we're seeing a significant development just even in the last 12 months as we've looked at who we would deem aspirational, as we've looked at top employers globally. We've looked at Google, we've looked at LinkedIn themselves, we've looked at Nike, we've looked at Adidas, we've looked at, you name it, even Meta, the way in which they're attracting talent, the way in which they're trying to convince talent to join their organization. A lot of it is now pivoting towards content. Have they got an EVP they can stand by? Do they truly understand the benefits of working for their organization, and are they sharing those benefits? LVMH, for those that have come across the LVMH brand, they put out a significant campaign only 3 months ago about why people should join LVMH as a global group of as an employer of multiple brands within the group. And fundamentally, it boiled down to one thing: it was content. They created a brand destination separate to the corporate website, separate to the recruitment agency website, and separate to the company website. They've created a fully fledged careers website, not just a page. So we've seen the advent of products such as Team Tailor for the last couple of years. We could spin up an integration where you could get your job list We've seen applicant tracking systems plug into where you can list the vacancies onto your existing careers page. But fundamentally, it's just not enough. Everybody has flexible working hours nowadays. People typically have flexible, you can work at home, fresh fruit, holidays, pensions. There's nothing unique, special, or different on these careers pages. And that's something that we're working really hard at Venn to now change. People want to know the why. People want to know why work for your agency, why work for your company. So this is where now we're looking at areas such as creating a brand destination, building an EVP, sharing authentic content. So again, what we mean by that is very much going to the apprenticeships team and looking at how they can tell their stories, going to the management team and talking about how they've managed to get into that position, be as authentic as possible. It's that social endorsement. I think as you look at those Google reviews in e-commerce, can we get similar Google reviews for employees who've gone through an employer, they've been supported, they've been trained, and they're really big advocates of building and telling their story. And ultimately that starts to build a new approach to talent acquisition, such as passive talent through social content, through TikTok. If you're getting these stories on video, get those stories shared through your own employer brand TikTok, get those stories shared through your own Facebook. Most employers are simply not using social channels to attract talent, but yet that's where everyone's hanging out. It's strange. We're posting a job on a job board. We're posting a job on an ATS. We're posting a job to an agency, but we're not actually telling the why behind why apply for that job at our organisation. So that's a shift that we're beginning to see in the demand that's coming through Venn, how employers can now build friction, is what we classed it as here, but how more friction can generate better signals. And with better signals and hiring signals, does that start to get stronger hires? Some of the really positive feedback we get from our agencies is because we built tools that create a little bit of friction. So instead of a quick CV drop and a quick apply, which I think is where we were maybe 2, 3 years ago, when there was a huge fight for talent, agencies were just desperate for any CV and they put in a huge amount of time phoning up and vetting and speaking to those CVs. We've now seen a shift where I think we want to see better quality applicants coming through. So how do you go about doing that? It's managing expectations. So on all Venn websites, the standard, one of the products we built was the commute search. So you could put where your postcode is and you can commute 30 miles or half an hour through cycling, driving, public transport. It was giving straight away, just managing the expectations, giving the candidate an experience of, can I even get to this place of work? What you don't want to do is start applying for jobs, turning up for interviews, fundamentally realizing that actually I'm on the wrong side of Manchester and this is going to take an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to work. Another product we built in was just setting expectations on Google Maps. As we began to go back to the workplace, people just fundamentally weren't sure where these places were. So again, going to a job board, applying for a job, having no inclination of where the job was on a map. So we built these products into the recruitment process before they even apply. So again, they've got two bites to the cherry. How long is it going to take me to get there? And where is this place? Even across Manchester city centre, across London, you completely underestimate how long it actually takes. So again, trying to improve better signals that this is a great place to go to work. So that's become standard in some of our products. Another tool that we've tried to create is just again looking at how we can manage expectations through stories. I just changed the next slide. It's back to this social hub product. So something we've just launched in a lot of the careers websites is once I know I can get there, once I know the job description's right for me, I probably want to know more about the agency. I want to know more about the employer. I want to know the why. So again, we don't believe in selling the job. We believe in selling the company. And there's so many great companies out there that just don't tell their story. There's almost an arrogance or a naivety to a lot of employers where they assume that people know who they are. And even in the building we work in, there's probably 30, 40 businesses in this building that we're in here at Venn. And I don't know who any of them are. Behind the glass window, behind the door, just don't even know what they do. And they could be fantastic employers, but if they don't have visibility through Google locally, if I look for top tech growing companies, Manchester, or who are the best companies to work for in the Northwest, a lot of the time people will start to browse through search or passively they'll be sat on Facebook, they'll be on TikTok, they'll be browsing for content at night passively, and suddenly they just happen across your videos, your content, and the destination we're building for our clients is a social hub where, again, it's designed to be more of a honeypot destination for people to make, again, more informed decisions. Why should I join this company? Not why should I do this job? I think if you're a lawyer, if you're an accountant, if you're in marketing, if you're in sales, you can pretty much say you can do that job anywhere, but it's the why do that job for that organization that's completely being missed. And that's why huge brands like LVMH are now coming out with a significant amount of career-led content, career-led endorsed content from their employees. They can't sit back on the laurels anymore. They can't expect people to aspire to work for them because there's so many fashion brands, there's so many retailers on the market now globally. You can pretty much work for anyone, anywhere, at any time. So looking at a social hub, looking at department-based content, again, I'm a big fan of selling departments. There's one thing as the employer, but again, within any large organization, there will be cultural microclimates where the marketing department is very different to sales, and the sales department will be very different to product, and product will be very different to operations. So just getting real stories, podcasts, insights, and interviews out of those departments will allow people to showcase their stories and why join that organization. So just rounding up, and then we can open up to any questions. But I think for me, just this little checklist for today's first webinar and a bit of series of webinars over the next 12 months, it's really just making sure that we start with the basics. And the checklist for us that we've created for today's presentation is just more around, do you even have an employer brand destination? And just ask yourself that question. Do you have a page within your existing site? That could be fine. Is it enough though? Do you have enough insight, enough value where you've built a destination? And again, think about the content you're putting onto that page with AI scaling at large, and even Google now testing lots of different products and lots of different ways in which Google's displaying the content it's sharing. AI is scraping your content. So again, low commitment, low value. So if you're not putting much into that employer destination, then AI, Google is not able to scrape any of that content to showcase your brand if people are searching for an organization like yours. So the more you've got on that destination, the better. Number two falls into that same topic. Are you promoting your company, or are you just promoting the job? Again, I'll say it again, MD can be an accountant anywhere. It's giving people the choice of why they should join your organization. That's the bit that's being missed. Again, we see it with a lot of our recruitment agencies. They'll talk top level about their experience in life sciences or data centers or tech, but actually going into the detail around the employer brand can often be missed because they just simply haven't got the insight. And that's where employers can do more to help agencies, and employers can do more to help themselves by sharing that content. Number three, I think the influence. Again, what are you doing to influence the candidate's decision to join? Again, I think there's no shortage of demand for top talent, and I know the economy is changing. I think the demand for talent is not shrinking. I think they're just being put into different roles. I think you're seeing new startups all the time, new businesses starting all the time. So how are you influencing somebody's decision to join your business? I think historically, that's been a brilliant partnership with recruitment agencies, and they've represented your employer brand really well and told those stories on your behalf. But now you have a platform. If you've created a destination, if you've created the content, and you can push that content out through social channels, not LinkedIn, out through out through TikTok, Facebook, Instagram. Don't just assume people are hanging out on LinkedIn. Most people are not. And I think that's a challenge that recruiters are now facing. They use the marketplace of LinkedIn as a place to find talent. But certainly in my company and lots of companies I work with, people are just busy doing their jobs. They're not hanging about actively on LinkedIn. So it's where can we find that talent and then influence their decision to join a business. And then finally, just use AI tools. There's so many available, and I can put some in the document we'll share later on today. But I think the amount of AI tools that are out there, it's a good thing. I think people are scared initially of AI and what it can do for your business. But certainly where we've adopted it in Venn, it's now replacing some of the more menial manual tasks that take time, that steal time from our day, and how AI is now giving us back time to become more human. We can use AI to do more interviews, but it's doing interviews that matter. It's doing interviews that are of value. It's speaking to candidates who are more likely to fit the company, the culture, and the role. And we've maybe used AI, or we've used content, or we've used influence to say, look, this is where we are, this is where we're based, this is what we do. And then people may choose not to apply, which ultimately maximizes the time of a talent acquisition manager. So that's a roundup for today, a quick half an hour overview that hopefully has added some value to your day, and you've taken a few pieces of content or pieces of influence away from your day and how that may impact the way in which you want to hire going forward. I'll quickly open up to the floor, the dreaded point of people asking questions. Are there any immediate questions from MD in the chat that I can answer just now? And if not, I will let you sit back in peace and quiet. Jess.
Hi, Brian. Not a question, just a comment on the content in terms of the AI and making it human. I think that is really important. AI, we're seeing a surge of different tools, and it's going to be one of those things. It's going to help you get somewhere quicker, but it's all about where you get to. Is it sustainable? And I think those companies who manage to still keep the human element or to use AI to drive the human element are going to be those that see more sustainable growth, and are there going to be those companies that are probably set aside to the rest. If you fast forward like 20 years from now, those companies that manage to keep that human heart element are going to be the ones that connect to people more, both from a consumer perspective, but also in terms of like talent and customer and so on. So yeah, I really liked the point that you made there in terms of use AI, but use it to become more human.
Got to get a t-shirt made. I do look at, again, as an employer myself, Jess, I do agree with you. I'm concerned that post pandemic, too many employees have wanted to stay at home, use online tools, turn my camera off, sit on Microsoft Teams and hide behind email, and we're becoming less human. We don't have those human connections. So that's a behavioural challenge that I think employers should do more to break. So the more we can have people back interacting and being more human is a good thing as far as I'm concerned. And that starts from the first touch point, the first experience of your employer brand. Again, whether you're a recruitment agency or whether you're a direct employer, you've got to think about that first human interaction. And if you've completely removed the human face of your business and automated it completely, what impression does that give about how well you treat your staff or how human you actually are? So yeah, I think you raise a really good point, and I appreciate you agreeing with it. We've all got to do a little bit more. Okay, if there's no more questions, I will wrap up the session. So you'll get the notes from here, and I think the follow-up for those that couldn't attend the session, we'll send out the video recording. We'll put on a link in there if anybody wants to book an appointment with any of the team to talk about how our product may support you in terms of agency growth or direct employer engagement growth. Then one of the sales team will put a link in there where you can book an appointment. But thank you for listening today. Thank you for attending, and we'll be in touch soon. Bye-bye.